Hello everybody and welcome, Dimitri's a bit low there. Welcome to this week's Easy 11 Plus live lesson with me and Dimitri. And we're going to be looking at some creative writing this week. We're going to look at how to describe a scene. So a really short piece of writing to feed into your longer pieces of creative writing for your exams. If you haven't looked yet, don't forget to check out the 11 Plus Lifeline special offer where you can send me a piece of writing for free feedback. An unmissable opportunity to get video comments, often when possible, featuring a cat, such as this one. It was Dimitri's first birthday the other day, so he's very excited, as you can see. Look how excited he is. Anyway, enough waffle. Let's get cracking with the lesson. There goes Dimitri. Don't forget that the worksheet for today's lesson is linked in the video description, underneath the video on YouTube, above the YouTube on Facebook. And if you want to get the worksheets in advance, then sign up to my mailing list by clicking the free resources link, and that will put you onto my mailing list and you'll get the worksheets early. Right, enough of all that. Let's go into looking at the task for today. So here we are. Comments starting to come in. Someone says it's not starting. I hope it is. Someone liked me. Thank you. Diamond Panda says, guys, like the video to support Robert. Diamond Panda, thank you so much for your support. Right, okay. So, this is the task. You're about 200 meters from the beach when a large shadow appears beneath your boat. Describe the moment as effectively as you can using only the space provided. You do not need to complete the story and you do not need to fill the writing space. So the writing space was a very widely spaced page. So I think it was 13 lines of normal handwriting. So it'll be rather less when I'm typing, which is what I'm going to do here, so that you can read it. This was the cover image for today's lesson, so you can get a sense of one possibility, but certainly your story doesn't need to feature cats and it doesn't need to feature a shark, especially an enormous prehistoric one, such as features here. Right, okay, let's get into the video. Someone's asking me to mention them. I don't tend to mention people if they ask for it, because otherwise that's all the comments include. But I am very glad that you're there. If you say something amazing, then maybe I'll mention your name. Someone says, can you cover the nth term? Not in this lesson, it's a creative writing lesson. But good news for you, there are several videos on the nth term in the channel already. So what I suggest you do is search YouTube for Easy 11 Plus nth term or Easy 11 Plus sequences, and you'll find various resources on that. Okay, someone says, Lela Lord wishes Dimitri happy birthday, so does Yogaswaran. Thank you, everybody. And yes, welcome to the... Oh, come on, new people, okay, who said they were new. Lord of the Rings is new. Lord of the Rings has been around for quite a long time, actually, but I'm glad to have that magnificent novel turning up in the chat. Sid Cup 2, it's their first time. Oh, come on, who else is new? If you're new, welcome. And if you're not new, welcome too. Right, let's get cracking with this. So, one of the most important things when you start any piece of writing is to get right into the heart of it. Especially in an exam, you do not have time or space to build up. So do not begin by saying, I ate my breakfast of... No, do not do that, okay? Do not say, I woke up with a start when my alarm did something or other. No, do not do that either. Do not say, we pushed off from the beach. You're getting closer, but you're still not into the heart of things. You have a very, very limited space in which to write about a large shadow appearing beneath your boat. Just write about this. Get absolutely into the heart of this. If there's one thing you take away from today's lesson, this is probably the most important thing. Yeah, if you're writing a book, you can do whatever you want as long as you can find someone to publish it. But when you're doing a short task for an exam like this, get right into things. Do not waste time introducing. It's super important. Right, okay, I've said that already. So what can we do? So it would be most obvious to begin by saying, I looked down and saw a large shadow. But that would be boring because it would be obvious. Might it be more interesting to look down and not see a large shadow? Or to look down and maybe see something, but not really appreciate what it is or why it matters? So that we're immediately into the event, but there's an element of surprise, of suspense. The most obvious thing would begin by saying, I saw it. But a less obvious thing might be to begin by saying, I saw it, but I did not really see it. What does that mean? And the fact that the reader is thinking, what does that mean? And what is it? Means that they are engaged and curious and want to build on through the story. Irrelevant questions about things like cats or whatever, save them for later. As you know, if you're familiar with this channel, there'll be a question and answer session later on when I will deal with these things, but I don't want to get too distracted. So I appreciate the questions, but I'm going to try and stay focused. Right, I saw it, but I did not really see it. Okay, so now the reader's thinking, what was it? So with everything you write, ask yourself, what questions will the reader be asking about this? So what was it that I saw but didn't see? So it would have to be some kind of darkness in the water, but I don't really recognise that it's anything unusual. So I see the darkness, but I don't appreciate its significance. So what could I call it? A shadow. But if I said, no, it's a shadow, I know there's something there. So it's just going to be a kind of dark mark. Yeah. We want this to be something big and dramatic because I've got an idea in my mind. So let's call it, if I call it long, that's obvious. Let's call it wide. So I'm always thinking, a little bit like if you've been playing with, here's a little analogy for you. If you've been playing with ChatGPT and the new spectacular range of artificial intelligence chatbots developed from neural networks, what they tend to do to take something very complex and make it very simple is that they tend to predict the very most likely next word, and then they pick a next word that's slightly less likely. And that means that they don't always give the most obvious and predictable answer, and they become more human-like. So that's kind of what we're doing here as well. We're saying I could call it long. That's like that's a high probability word. So I'm going for wide, slightly less obvious, but still consistent. A wide, dark shadow. No, we don't know whether it's a shadow yet. It's just a mark. The water's just dark. A wide, dark mark. Beneath the water. On the water. So I'm doing the same thing again. Obvious to say that it's beneath the water, more interesting to think about it being on the water, because of course what you see is on the water, even if it's an impression of something below. In effect, it's refracted up through the surface of the water, if you want to get kind of technical about it, or faux technical. A wide dark mark on the water, if it was just a little mark like that, I'd think, what is that? If it's covering a really big area, then I'm not thinking about it so much because it's just a darker area of the sea. A wide dark mark on the water. And yeah, let's make it really stretch out. Extending far ahead of the boat and behind it. Okay, so I saw it, but I did not really see it. What does that mean? So I'm asking the reader's questions. Always ask yourself the questions that your imaginary reader is asking. Try to think of yourself as a reader for whom words are being created more than as a writer. Okay? Okay. So, extending far beneath it. So, why did I see it but not really see it? Because it was a normal thing. I could say it was a normal thing. I'm getting rid of it was. I want to get rid of all unnecessary words. A normal thing. What do I mean by a normal thing? If it was a big shadowy object there, that wouldn't be normal. But if it's just sort of a kind of just one of these dark areas of water, then that's not weird. So an impression of the light. How about this? So you know that phrase, a figment of your imagination, something that's made up? Let's go with that. A figment of the light. So it's kind of something imagined by the light almost. I'm playing with words. Of the light, something created by what's shining on the water, or of the depths, something created by what's below. Okay, so now we have a sense of what this person sees. I saw it, but I did not really see it. What they saw was that the water was dark in that area, a big area, just in a normal way, something created by the way the light shines down or the way that there's some kind of darkness from below, you know, a deeper bit of the sea or whatever it might be. We're a couple of 100 yards out from the beach, so the seabed may still, you know, will still be having some influence on the darkness of the water, figment of the light or of the depths. Okay, so if you didn't really see it, what you do, you look down, you see the shadow, but you don't really register it consciously. So what do? You look at something else, I guess. I looked away. So we're asking the readers questions, and then we're coming up with responses. I looked away, and did I think about it? No, I didn't think about it, because I looked away without realizing that I'd seen anything, without knowing that there had been anything to look away from. How about just that? Look at my typing, sensational. Think about my touch typing. I do touch type, but I've never learned to touch type properly. So I kind of, if I get my fingers in the right position and the right rhythm, I just touch type without looking at the keyboard. But then as soon as my hands slip slightly, I just produce complete nonsense. Okay, so it's kind of like what I say, really. It's analogous. I looked away without knowing that there had been anything to look away from. Okay, now what do I always say to people who are writing? I say, think about the 5 senses. I mean, the sea, you could talk about the sun, but we've already got lots of things about what you see. Let's have a sensation, and let's have a sensation of, let's have the wind. So the wind, the breeze, because we don't want it to be too windy, because we want to be able to see through the water. That's useful for later. The breeze. So you're always thinking and connecting. You're thinking back to what you've written and what questions the reader might ask about it, and you're thinking forward to where you want to get to. I've got an idea in my mind of where I want to get to, and I haven't told you that idea, but it's essential that you have an idea. You need to know what big moment you're building to. It doesn't need to be some big explosion, but there needs to be some focal moment of drama, even just on a subtle emotional level, that you know you're heading towards, so that the things you write can be informed by that. The breeze was brushing my face. That's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? People say it all the time. The breeze was, let's make it a bit firmer. The breeze was slapping at my face. If I say the breeze was slapping my face, that's a bit like slap, slap, slap. If I say it's slapping at my face, it's kind of like it's trying to slap my face, but it's not really strong enough to really do it. So that little word at just makes a subtle difference. And these subtle things are really important for making your writing effective. By the way, people who are worrying that this is going to go on for hours, it isn't. So this was 13 lines on the original page, so I'm going to write maximum 9-10 lines here, I think, because that's going to be a kind of comparable length for the handwritten space. So, we're probably about halfway there. The breeze was slapping at my face. So what would you do? Let's imagine your hair is a little bit longer than mine, certainly a bit longer back here. The breeze was slapping at my face, and then what would you do? Maybe it's blowing in your eyes, so you raise a hand to push the hair from my eyes. Why am I just talking about this stuff, by the way? I'm talking about this stuff. Oh, someone's found a squeaky toy. That's going to be interesting in the background. I'm talking about this stuff just briefly in this one sentence where the person is doing irrelevant stuff to really show that they're not thinking much about the shadow, so that when something happens to do with this shadow, it is more dramatic. But I'm not going to go off massively on one and write loads of irrelevant things, and that's a really important balance to maintain. The breeze was slapping at my face, and let's keep it simple. I raised a hand, said my touch typing was terrible, hand to push the hair from my eye. I could say my eyes, I'm just saying my eye because why not? It makes it a bit more specific. Breeze is slapping, it's pushing the hair down, I push it back. So I'm just doing that action, and now we want something to happen to do with the shadow because we've already used half the space. So let's change of focus, and change of focus means new paragraph. Of course it does. What's going to get my attention? Something bumping into the boat. That's going to do it. Something bumped into the boat. No, I don't know that. I'm in that situation, and then something happens to distract me from it. What would distract me? I don't know immediately something's bumped the boat. What I know is that I almost get knocked over. There was a hard jolt, so I know there's a jolt. I don't know what's caused it. And what do I do if I'm standing there or crouching or whatever, wiping my eye and there's a jolt? I'm going to go, whoa. And if you go like that, I'm going to grab out and grab things. Let's imagine this is a small boat, so I'm going to grab out to the sides and grab the sides of the boat. What do you call the sides of a little rowing boat? They are the gunnels, with a funny spelling. There was a hard jolt and I grabbed out. Because it's happening, so I want to show it's happening really quickly, and this is a reflex. I grabbed out instinctively, and then I steadied myself. I won't say and then I steadied myself. I'm going to keep it more concise. Why use 4 words or 5 words, whatever it is, when I can use 2? Steadying myself, let's be specific, with a hand on each gunwale. Yep, that's how you spell gunwale, I believe, the sides of a rowing boat where the oars would be attached. That's my rowing motion. There's a hard job, and I grabbed that instinct to be steadying myself with a hand on each gunwale. And now the shadow is doing something. Whatever the shadowy thing is, it's not the boat. We're nearly there, by the way. I'm going to finish soon, because we don't need to finish this story. We just need to get to a decent breaking point for this. We need to get to the dramatic climax. This would not be a good place to stop, but as soon as we've done something with the shadow, we can. Okay, and what am I going to do then? That's what the reader asks. What does he do? I look down, but what am I expecting to see? So I'm going along and there's a hard jolt. What do I think? Do I think there is a vast shark about to eat the boat? No, I think I've knocked into a bit of floating wood or something. What do you call that? Driftwood. So let's keep this simple, and we can always edit it if we need to. I look down into the water. I look down at the water because I'm just peeping over the side. I look down at the water, and what did I expect to see? That's what the reader asks. I'm going to give them what they want. Expecting to see, some driftwood. What's the driftwood doing? Knocking against the hull, because that would explain the jolt. Okay. So notice the process. Look, you shouldn't really care about my writing here, because this is one version of an infinite number of possible answers to this story. This is not the right version. There is no such thing as a right version. What you need to be doing, and this is the whole point of this lesson, of all these lessons I do on creative writing, you need to notice the process, how I'm talking about it. And what I'm doing, I'm always asking myself questions. And I'm trying to ask myself the reader's questions about everything that I write. And that guides what I do next. I'm looking at it as though I am the reader, not as though I am the writer. Sundars Khan, I like your contribution. There was a thud and it rocked side to side. I really like that. Don't think you need the capital letters for thud. You don't need to do that in noises. I'm just thinking of things now because I'm nearly finished, so I'm just going to take a moment. Krishna Singhal writes, a little splash rippled beneath my boat. Suddenly a large shadow grimly looked up at me. Everything went dark. I was dreading the worst. The glint of sharp teeth glared at me. I was dead. So there's some really good things in there. You're kind of repeating when you say the shadow looked up at me, the glint of sharp teeth glared at me. I would maybe not say grimly looked up at me, because you want to keep a little bit of suspense. And as soon as you say looked up, you're telling me it's something with an I. But I do like the drama and the melodrama in there. Some great ideas. Totodea mea. My heart beat as I saw a Stygian shadow appear underneath the boat. Whoa. You don't need to say appear, and you could say beneath rather than underneath if you want to be a bit shorter, but really good. Okay, anyway, let's carry on. Expecting to see some driftwood knocking against the hull, so the reader asks, but what did you see? Because clearly it isn't going to be that. Everything is built up to it not being that. What is it? Well, I'm going to annoy you by using words before I tell you. Right there was a shark. No, right there, I'm going to hold it off a bit longer. It's just beneath the water, so it's going to be slightly distorted by the effect of the water, by the ripples and so on, but not much. It's going to be barely distorted. Barely distorted by the water. By how much water? How far beneath the surface is it? So I'm asking questions, but I'm not answering the big one, which is what is it? Keeping the reader hanging on a bit, and this is a cheap trick for creating a little bit of drama, but sometimes the cheap tricks are the most effective. Right there, barely distorted by how deep is the water going to be? I want to see it clearly, whatever it is, but I want it to be under the water. And it's got to be near enough to the surface it knocks the boat. See how you think through all these things? Let's make it about a hand's depth deep. And that's really easy for the reader to imagine. It's much better than saying 15 centimetres, which they then have to think, how far is that? Get the ruler out. A hand's depth. Everyone can imagine a hand's depth. It doesn't matter if people's hands are different sizes. It doesn't need to be that precise. Barely distorted by a hand's depth of... So if you can see it clearly, let's make clear that there's sun on the water. Of sunlit water. Okay. Barely distorted by a hand's depth of sunlit water was... No, let's hold it off a little bit longer. Mwahahaha. And let's make it something you'll know exactly what it is and quite unmistakable. Unmistakable. So is there an E in that? Yeah, that'd be unmistakable. Unmistakable has an E. So sometimes you need to play with spellings a little bit just to be certain to check what looks right and sounds right. Barely distorted by a hand's depth of sunlit water and quite unmistakable was an eye. Let's be more specific. Was a broadly staring eye. Or wide and staring eye, but I said wide in the first line. So I'm always looking back and checking I don't repeat too much. This is another thing that the latest generation of chatbots do very well, is they self-reference, going back, checking the things they'd written earlier, and that feeds into their probability calculation for the next word. Right there, barely distorted, but I'm just your nearest chatbot. In a few years' time, it won't even be me on the channel. It'll be a fake AI Robert Lomax doing probability calculations on the next word. In a way, that's what I'm doing anyway. Was a broadly staring eye. Right, let's read through this. So let's read through the question first of all. You're about 200 meters from the beach when a large shadow appears beneath your boat. It is Robert Lomax coming to get you with his Easy 11 Plus homework. Describe the moment as effectively as you can using only the space provided. You do not need to complete the story and you do not need to fill the writing space. Okay, lots of nots there. I saw it, but I did not really see it. A wide dark mark on the water, extending far ahead of the boat and behind it. A normal thing, a figment of the light or of the depths. I looked away without knowing that there had been anything to look away from. The breeze was slapping at my face and I raised a hand to push the hair from my eye. There was a hard jolt and I grabbed out instinctively, steadying myself with a hand on each gunwale. I looked down at the water, expecting to see some driftwood knocking against the hull. Right there, barely distorted by a hand's depth of sunlit water and quite unmistakable, was a broadly staring eye. Okay. There we are, today's masterpiece. That was really quick, we're only 20 minutes in. So I'm not going to do it again, but let's just talk about, can people be nice in the comments? By the way, last week there was a bit of a crisis that there were some people posting very rude words and so on in the comments. I even got some emails about it afterwards and people saying they really hated it. And when I look back, I really hated it too. And in the end, I had to delete the comments from the video completely. So for today and for the future, as far as I can tell, it's been fine today, although obviously I've been concentrating on the writing. But it's really important, please, in this channel that you're polite in the comments and don't post any rude words or anything. If I do find offensive things in the comments, I will block you from the channel. But if it happens too much, there won't be able to be a live chat, and that would be a great shame. Okay, right. I'm just going to think about some other possible openings for this. Some first sentences, first phrases that you could have. So we had one beginning in our piece here, where I'll put some stars to give some alternatives. So these are alternative beginnings, okay, that we're doing now. Oops, don't want that. Stop it! Oh, there we are. Okay, listen to me. So how else could you do this? I began by not seeing what it was. You could have an alternative opening that still creates some suspense, but says, I knew immediately what it was. That would be an interesting first sentence, because what is it? Why do you know immediately, and how do you feel about that? First sentences that ask a lot of questions are often good first sentences. Okay, you could go straight in describing the shadow, but again, let's try to do this with a little bit of mystery. First of all, it looks blurry, so the blur formed itself into, well, I suppose it's going to become clearer if things come together. Oh, great word. Coalesced into an edge, and then I suppose, yeah, and then the edge became a shape. So we've got a process, but it's keeping suspense, because what is it going to be? Became a shape. And then the reader wants to hear, and the shape was a giant squid. But I'm not going to tell them what it was, because I'm going to hold off a bit further by showing how I reacted, but not what it was. The blur coalesced into an edge, and then the edge became a shape, and I recoiled. So that means it must be something horrific or terrifying. I recoiled, falling back onto the floor of the boat. So this is really annoying for the reader because I'm building up, I'm saying the edge and there's a shape, and then I'm horrified by the shape, but I won't say what it is. And then I'm going to build it up. So you can get right into describing the thing without saying, I saw the shark coming for me, or the squid's tentacle wrapped around my neck and squeezed, or anything like that. You can build up and create a lot more drama than just going all in on the craziness. Scroll down a little bit. What about something totally different? We had the cats at the beginning. So let's imagine that you're coming in. One really effective thing can be to write as though you've already said something else, but you haven't. It was at that moment that my dog started barking. So many questions for the reader. What moment? What's just been happening? They want to know what's going on. They've come into the middle of a story whose parameters they do not understand. What's the dog barking about? Why does this matter? Is this a trustworthy dog? Does it normally bark at silly things or stupid things? I don't know. Or one of the Dimitri is across the room. He's staring at me. That means he's doing something naughty, and he's worried that I've noticed. He's very bad at hiding naughtiness. Grigri is very good at hiding naughtiness. For example, he's not allowed on the surface in the kitchen, so he doesn't go on the surface in the kitchen when I'm in the room. But as soon as I'm out of the room, he jumps up and grabs whatever he wants to grab. And then when I come back into the room, he hops down and pretends he was never there. Anyway. That would not be Dimitri behaviour. He would jump up when I was there and then look at me going, oh no, is this naughty? Help, is this naughty? Anyway, yeah, so I often talk about, where did that come from? Oh, Dimitri staring at me. One bit of advice I often give is to find an interesting angle from the 5 senses. What would be a really surprising sense here? How about the sense of smell? So just use it. But why not acknowledge that the sense of the smell is surprising? Let's do a you story, as it were. Perhaps you won't believe it. Perhaps you won't, perhaps you will. But it was the smell that warned me, how about that tipped me off? That's a nice idiom. But it was the smell that tipped me off. Maybe something like a smell that somehow reached out to me from beneath the waves. I don't know. I'm being a little bit melodramatic. Of course I am. Anyway, loads of different ways you can begin this. That will do. Okay, quick glance at the comments, and then we'll go into the tip of the week. Carol Knowles, I looked round frantically to see if there was an island I could swim to. It had been very unfortunate that I had lost both oars, because then I may have had the chance to escape. It's lovely, but I don't think it's a great response to the title, because this requires you to describe the moment when the shadow appears. So in an exam, or with any writing task, always do exactly what the question requires. Don't be sidetracked into something slightly different. Someone says, do you need to use paragraphs? Can you not use them? When it's this length, you could get away without. But you need a paragraph in my piece, I think, because there's that sudden switch in focus. Okay, right. Abby says, Robert, I heard you'll make the chat only for members when you have about 50 members. And I thought maybe about 50 members. I think the chat's going pretty well with subscribers at the moment. When there are sufficient members, I will consider making the chat only members. But you can bring that thing closer by becoming a member and accessing all my extra resources and getting a free pencil case and pen. Thank you very much for the plug. I think if I made the chat, there aren't enough members who are live in my lessons to have an active live chat. Vibes, how do I get Easy 11 Plus free back help? I'll post it in a comment, but it's the home video on the Easy 11 Plus homepage. The main video there explains it. Basically, go to the 11 Plus Lifeline webpage. Just Google 11 Plus Lifeline or 11pluslifeline.com. 11 in numbers. There's a big banner there that tells you all about it. Simple. Okay, let's hop into the... Right, tip of the week this week. When you are writing a story, always know where you're going. If you just go through not knowing, you might know what's going to happen, but if you don't know what the main thing is, what the most emotionally important event in your story is, you'll kind of drift about. And you won't really give the reader a sense that you're going anywhere. Whereas if you have a clear sense that this is the moment in which the character feels most anxious, or this is the moment in which the character discover something important about themselves, and that's what I'm building towards, then you'll know as you write that everything is going to be contributing to that, and you'll know to cut past things that are less important, and you'll also realise when you've hit the big emotional climax, and that everything afterwards is going to be about the characters dealing with that and processing it and understanding their emotions in response to it. So when you start writing a descriptive piece, a story, anything like that, whether it's for an exam or anything else, even if it's a 500-page book, make sure that you have a very, very clear sense of where this is going and specifically of where the high point is, because otherwise your story or your description or whatever it is will start to look a bit like a list. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, this happened, and the reader gets to the end and thinks, why? And why do I care? That's the tip of the week. And let's have a look at your questions. This is going to be quite a short lesson today, which suits me because I'm quite tired. Thomas' story about the cat Grigri and Dimitri. I know. Robert, do you like Dimitri or Grigri more? I love them both. They're very different. Grigri is more kind of outwardly emotional and sort of curious about the world. Dimitri is kind of a bit like Totoro, if you know the Studio Ghibli film. You know, he's sort of he sits and watches and contemplates and is very thoughtful. But you know, he's also very affectionate in his kind of quiet way. They're a very amusing pair because they're very different. Robert is the goat of 11+. Fortunately, I know what that means. Otherwise, I might take offence. Thank you very much. Helen Holyhead nearly became a shark's dinner. Apparently, I think you mean you nearly became a shark's dinner, and I'd be very interested to hear that story if that's a real story from your life. Is it best to slip a question and come back to it? If you think a question is going to waste time, then yes, basically. But make sure you mark clearly in the margin some symbol for yourself to say, this is one that I think I can get, but I just need to save time for it. Certainly, you do not want to be staring at the page and wasting time when you aren't sure how to start a question even. That's kind of the key question. Do I have a way into this? Can I start it? Obviously, the exception is in an exam like a computer exam where you can't go back. Then obviously you have to say, well, this question's going to waste time, so it needs my best guess, which is a slightly different situation. And some exams are in sections. So they say you must stop that section now, move on to the next, you can't go back. So in that case, obviously make sure you've done what you can with the question first. But as a broad rule, it's about timing. It's if a question looks like it's going to waste lots of your time, the earlier you decide to skip and move on, the better you will do. Thank you for your question, Tops A. Abel Abraham says, I pay $14.99 a month, but I don't get to watch member videos. I would assume that's because you're a member of 11+ Lifeline, which is a totally different service and not linked to this YouTube channel. Did I do the 11+? I may have done some entrance exam, but I was already at the school in a junior school. And so I honestly can't remember. I didn't kind of do a very serious 11+, which I'm sure makes me utterly unqualified to do this. It's not part of my lived experience. Right. How do you make sure you don't make silly mistakes? Very important. I don't know, you're asking the wrong person. I make silly mistakes endlessly. I mean, the real answer is practice. And very specifically, it's practicing while keeping an eye out for your own silly mistakes. What you need to do is recognize what kind of mistakes you habitually make so that when that situation comes up, you're able to avoid it. So let's say, for example, that you tend to make grammar mistakes with possessives. So you mess up apostrophes. So one thing you should then do is whenever you write a word ending in S, just do a quick check for yourself about whether it is a possessive and should have an apostrophe, just for example. So it's about practicing, but practicing mindfully. In other words, learning what your silly mistakes are that you typically make and learning to avoid them. Do you have to have chapters in stories? I mean, there are no rules at all. In an exam, don't have chapters. Everything should be focused in one particular episode. Don't leap in time. Don't jump to the next day. Just keep it focused. That's almost always going to produce the best exam story. If you're writing a book that's, hundreds of pages long, you don't have chapters. It could get a little bit overwhelming for the reader, but that's an aesthetic choice. So the simple answer is no. Don't be rude to each other, Layla Lord, please. Thank you. Looks like you're being rude. I apologise if you're not. Have I played Minecraft? I messed around with Minecraft a little bit during the pandemic, but I got a bit bored with it after a while. What is my cat called? My cats, they're called Dimitri. He's the big fluffy one you saw at the beginning. And Grigri, he's the smaller kitten, although getting less small, whom I may grab shortly if he's anywhere around. Are you around, boys? What? No, they're off playing, so I may not be grabbing a cat. Hey, hi, hi, ho, hum. Okay, I feel like the questions are running a little... Have you watched Enola Holmes? I have seen that film. It's all right. How many times did you say let's check. Wow, 624 times. Tinola, how do you stop people's bad remarks about your intelligence from hurting you? There we are. It's another I get them all the time, these remarks. Perils of doing things in public. It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, you can't stop things hurting you. Nasty things people say. It isn't magic like that. You don't have an off button. I think what you do is you learn a certain kind of resilience and ability to survive these things. And probably the main source of that is knowing certain things about yourself that are stronger than what other people say about you. Because if you know yourself reasonably well, you know what your strengths and weaknesses are, then if someone criticizes you for something that actually you think you're okay with, or then okay at, then you think, well, I think you're wrong, it doesn't really matter. If they criticize you for something that you already know is a fault, then you think, well, I know that's a fault, so it doesn't matter too much either. So I think it comes from kind of self-knowledge and also just accepting that people are going to say nasty things. More directly, if you are having issues with people being unkind to you and saying nasty things, then I really almost always strongly recommend talking to an adult. I've said this before on this channel in answer to questions. I remember being bullied at one point at school and thinking that, one thing I couldn't do was tell anybody, but I told the teacher anyway. And I thought this horrible, scary bully would, just get worse. And in fact, as soon as the teacher spoke to them, they were never nasty to me ever again. So, yeah, in terms of your own, development, I think it's about learning about yourself, being honest with yourself about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that makes it much easier to accept what people say. But I think more directly, if you're having unpleasant experiences with people, then talk to adults about it, and you'll be amazed how much that can help. Not me, because I can't help you, unfortunately, but someone who has some involvement in the situation and knows the people involved. And I wish you the best of luck with it. Show us your cats, please. Well, you said please, so I suppose I shouldn't say it in that voice. Says Abhishek. Do I have a cat around? I don't think I have a cat around. I just checked. I may go and grab a cat in a second. All right. Look, I am going to... Someone says, I think Grigri and Dimitri are Russian. They are indeed of Russian heritage. They are Siberian forest cats. Are they a replacement for Hans? Nobody could ever replace Hans. Hans was a truly wonderful cat. Grigri and Dimitri are fantastic cats in their own right. Let's put it that way. Okay, would you get more cats? Lord of the Rings asks. No, I think 2 cats is probably as much as our landlord could reasonably be expected to tolerate. Right, all right, I'm just going to run and see if I can grab a cat. I'll be no more than about 10 seconds, I hope. You can count down for me. Well, you may have heard some noises in the background there. That's because Grigri fled. He really didn't want to feature in this video. So I've got Dimitri again because he's slower to get going. He's more like a tank. Look at that. Look at that for a beast of a cat. All right, people. I think I'm going to say goodbye here. It's been fantastic to have you. Sorry if I was 15 or 22 seconds. That's what it took. Anyway, there we are. Back to the music. I'm going to disappear soon. Dimitri wants to disappear. It's been fantastic to have you here. Dimitri, what's all this carry on about? Say hello to your fans. Say goodbye to your fans. All right, people. See you next Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock, as always, for the next Easy 11 Plus live lesson, which will be on something else. And happy birthday to Itesh, whose birthday will be on the 7th of April. Hang on, that'll be next lesson. I should wish you happy birthday. Oh, well, you got an early one. All right, bye, everybody.